Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Patajana Randana Shodanandana Patajana Randana Yashodanandana Brajajana Randana Yashodanandana Patajana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Muna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Natira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna. Welcome. What's your name, Prabhu?
Daniel.
Daniel. Nice to meet you, Daniel. My name is Dravida. Looks like it's just you and me.
Okay.
And whoever's there on YouTube. There's people watching on Zoom.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say the whole time. I'm very tired.
Okay.
And I made an effort to wake up from Mangalarti yesterday, and I slept in.
Oh.
So I'm going to try and go to bed a little earlier tonight.
Oh, that's great. Me too. And your name again, bro?
Daniel.
Daniel, sorry.
And Sanskrit?
Dravida.
Jovida.
Yeah.
Okay.
With an A. Dravida.
Dravida.
And we're starting a new chapter on page 303.
Okay.
Chapter 7. Very important chapter. They're all important. But our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada said that the middle 6 chapters are the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. So we're just beginning that middle 6 chapters of the 18. So you're not completely new, so you know the format. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya?
Yes.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay. On this 26th day of September 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Beginning chapter 7, entitled Knowledge of the Absolute, text number 1 on page 303. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Mai
Mai
asakta
asakta
mana
mana
partha
partha
yogam
yogam
yunjan
yunjan
marashriyah
marashriyah
asanshayam
asanshayam
samagram
samagram
mam
mam
yata
yata
gyasasi
gyasyasi
gyasyasi tatrinu.
tatrunu.
Shri Bhagavano Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Maya Saktamana Partha
Maya Sakta Mana
Partha
Partha
Yogam Yunjan Marashriyah
Yogam Yunjan Madashriya
Asanshayang Samagram Mam
Asamsayam Samagramam
Yatadgyasasi Tatrinu.
Yathagyasya Sitat Chinu.
Shri Bhagavano Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Maya Saktamana Partha
Maya Sakta Manaparta
Yogam Yunjan Marashriyah
Yogam Yunjan Madash Ashraya
Asanshayang Samagram Mam
Asamsayam Samagramam
Yatadgyasati Tatrinu.
Yathagrasya Sitachanam.
Shri Bhagavano Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Maya Saktamana Partha
Maya Sakta Manaparta
Yogam Yunjan Marashriyah
Yogam Yunjan Marashraya
Asanshayang Samagram Mam
Asamsayam Samagramam
Yathagyasati Tatrinu.
Yathagrasya Sitachanam.
You want to try it along, Daniel?
Sure. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavano Vacha
Ma Asakta Manaparta
Maya Saktamana Partha
Yogam Yunjan Madaya Shraya
Yogam Yunjan Marashriyah
Asasayam Samagramam
Asanshayang Samagram Mam
Yata Gyasyasi Tatstrinu.
Yathagyasati Tatrinu. Shri Bhagavano Vacha Maya Saktamana Partha Yogam Yunjan Marashriyah Asanshayang Samagram Mam Yathagyasati Tatrinu. Thank you, Brahma. All right, so I'll just read through the word by words. You can just read along silently. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, the Supreme Lord said, Mahi, to me, asaktamanaha, mind attached, partha, O son of Prita, yogam, self-realization, yunjan, practicing, mat ashriyaha, in consciousness of me, Krishna consciousness, asanshayam, without doubt, samagram, completely, mam, me, yata, how, gyasasi, you can know, tat, that, shinu, try to hear. So before we read the translation, I'm just going to open this door a little warm, rather than turn the air conditioning on, which will be a little bit loud. Okay. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Now hear, O son of Prita, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Purport. In this 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. In the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as non-material spirit soul capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal brahma-jyoti, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth, because it is partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed in the person, to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about brahma-jyoti and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, Tat Shrinu, or hear from me. Shravana means hearing. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him, one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna conscious person. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart puffed up with academic education. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. Shanvatam Sukata Krishna Punyashavana Kirtanaha Hridyantaksto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavadgita Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki Tadadadastamo Bhava Kamalo Bhadayaschaye Cheta Eta Anabidham Stitang Sattve Prasidati Evam prasanna manaso bhagavan bhakti yogataha bhagavat tatta vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate vidyate vidih grantis chidyante sarva sangshayaha chiyante chasya karmani drishta evatmanishware. Quote, to hear about Krishna from the Vedic literatures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. The Bhakti Yoga Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a Sangshayam Samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:17-21. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, as Srila Prabhupada mentions in this purport, in previous chapters, Krishna has laid out various yogas. There's kind of like a ladder goes up. And the first stage is the yoga of activity. In other words, you keep doing what you're doing, or you try to give up any gross sinful activity that you might be doing. And you give the lion's portion of the fruits of that activity to Krishna. So that means that you're not attached to that money or whatever it may be, but you become attached to Krishna. because you're giving it over to him. The danger of just working ordinarily without any relationship to self-realization is that your mind becomes filled with all kinds of desires, and you're performing activity that has to be, you have to receive either the good or bad karmic reactions. And all of that keeps you bound in this world, again, and take birth in this world. And suffer old age, disease, and death, birth, old age, disease, and death. So this round of birth and death is a kind of imprisonment of the living entity. We're taught that we are pure spirit, just like Krishna. Krishna is pure spirit. He's a complete original person, the source of everything. And we're also purely spiritual, but because we're minute, infinitesimal, we have the tendency to lose our bearing in the spiritual world in relation to Krishna and become fascinated with this external world. And that's the beginning of our sojourn here. And who knows how long we've been here. There's so many different species of life which we may definitely enter, because if we have no knowledge, we'll commit all kinds of sinful activities and lose the human form. And then there's no karma in these lower forms, cats, dogs, and a million others. But there's no knowledge either. There's no possibility of reconnecting. So the human form of life is this rare juncture. And we shouldn't waste it. In the Bhagavatam, there are many verses, but this one is one of my favorites about this. It says, Labdva sudurlabamidam bahusambhavante manusyamarta damanitchamapiya dhira turnam yateta napateda dumityavat nikshayasaya vishayakalasarvataksya. Are you familiar with Bhagavatam at all?
A little bit.
Little bit.
First two cantos.
Yeah, well, this is actually these 5 verses here were quoted from the first canto.
Okay.
So, yeah. So this verse is from the 11th canto, and Krishna speaks his verse, and he says, Labdva sudurlabamidam bahusambhavante manusham. Manusham is human form. The very word man is in there. So he says, after many, many births, you have attained the human form, which is sudurlabamidam. Sudurlama means very rare. Many births. Manusham. Now what's the difference between this form and other forms? Artadam. The word arta is a very common in Sanskrit. Arta can mean different things. It means something of value. It often means literally money or gold or something like that. Or it means something that you strive for, that you consider valuable. So here, this arta is meaning the ultimate goal or the ultimate value and necessity of life. But, so dam means to give. Dam means to give. So only in human form can we receive and can we achieve this ultimate goal of human life. And he'll explain a little bit what that is in this verse. But like all other forms, anitya, it's not eternal, it's temporary. So one has to be dhira. This word dhira comes up near the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. It means one's sober-minded and thoughtful about the ultimate goal of life, not just the immediate necessities or immediate sense gratification, but have a long-range, contemplative and equipoised attitude about life. So one has to be thoughtful, and then, having understood, turnam yateta means immediately, without wasting any time, because we don't know how much time we have. Strive. And what does he say to strive? He says, as long as the body is still functional and you're not at the point of death, then strive for nikshayasa. This word shreyas comes up in the Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter. And it means the good. And the nikshaya means the ultimate good. Because in life we find so many things that we need to strive for. We have to keep body and soul together. We have to strive to make some money so we can buy food and shelter. So there's all kinds of goods. But the one that is the ultimate good, nikshayasa, is what we should understand what that is and then strive for it without wasting any time. And then he concludes the verse, Vishayakalasarvataksat, because after all, in all the other human forms and other forms that we've had, we experienced all varieties of sense gratification. But all it has done, the ultimate result of that, is to bring us back again to another material form to suffer, away from Krishna. So we shouldn't go in that direction. We should strive for what's really valuable, which is, number 1, liberation from birth and death, and number 2, more importantly, reinstatement in our position in the spiritual world. If you've read Prabhupada books at all, you may have come across this phrase of back home, back to Godhead. It comes up in the Gita. So this is a wonderful phrase. It implies that's where we came from. We have our home. We're all aliens here. You know, we don't belong here. You know, and we don't know that though, and so we try to make a home here. We try to make security, but there's no security and no ultimate happiness. So, having come to this point, now he's got the last chapter was all about Ashtanga yoga, which is the classic yoga meditation. Ashtanga means 8 limbs, beginning with the don'ts and the do's. You know, you have to give things up to even begin, and then you have to take on certain things. And then sitting, asana. Classically, you know, he even describes sitting with back straight, you know. I can never get this idea of staring at the tip of the nose. I mean, I immediately feel cross-eyed as soon as I try that. I always thought it was at least in the eyebrows, you know. But anyway, so sitting, where to sit, alone, you know, in the forest, you know, and all these things. And then practice pranayama, he talks about that a little bit. And all to calm the mind and fix the mind on the Supersoul in the heart, basically, who's none different from Krishna. But Arjuna, who's after all a Kshatriya, you know, he's a warrior, he's active, he's a politician, says, I don't think I can do that. My mind is like so restless, it's like trying to control the wind. Like you may have noticed that there's a hurricane blowing up, you know, in the Caribbean, near, I don't know if you noticed, yeah. So each year, you know, there's a hurricane season. I used to live in Miami for 6 years, back in the 80s. And you around this time of year, July, August, September, you always watch the weather report. Is something blowing up in the Caribbean, coming, you know, across Cuba, heading for Miami or anything? And if, you know, as it comes closer, if it's really coming at you, then you got to batten the hatches. You can't control it. There's no way of controlling this powerful wind. So he compares his mind to that. He said, "Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balabhadradham," means the mind is very restless and very strong and obstinate. And to control it, I think, is like trying to control the wind. So Arjuna, he's not very sanguine, he's not very hopeful about practicing this process Krishna is describing. So Krishna says, yes, it's possible, you know, by practice. So Arjuna says, okay, you know, because after all, Krishna's a spiritual master, but what happens if I fail? You know, I'll go off to the Himalayas, give up all of my connections in you know, to family and my job. And then, but if I fail, then I'll fail in that, and I've already given this up, so I'll have no standing anywhere. What do I do? So Krishna says, well, you may fail. You may, you know, it's a difficult course, but you'll take birth in a family of yogis or a family of pious Brahmins and you won't lose anything. You begin the next life. So still Arjuna is not, you know, obviously about ready to do that. So at the end of this chapter, 6, previous chapter, he encourages him and said, actually, yoginam api sarvesham madgatein antaratmana. Of all the yogis, those who are always thinking with me with great love and faith and worshiping me, they're the best of all. So Arjuna, it's a big relief. You can practically hear on the pages, oh, what a relief. Because he's already doing that. He's the best friend of Krishna. He's always thinking of Krishna. Okay, so now he's saying, now I'm going to teach you an easy way that you can have your mind attached to me. Because the whole thing is in the mind. The mind is absorbed in material, or it's going to be absorbed in thinking of Krishna. So how to get control of that mind and turn it gradually from matter to spirit. So he says, Maya asakta mana. If the mind is naturally attached or attracted to Krishna, then where's the struggle? You know, in other words, now we're so conditioned that we don't know Krishna, we don't know anything, but we're attached to so many things in the material world. So there's a process of drawing the mind away from the material and putting it on the spiritual. So Krishna is introducing that. Yogam manashriya. Those who are conscious of me, who have taken shelter of me, who's conscious of taking shelter of me, without doubt, asangsyam, without doubt, completely, you can know me. Samagram mam yata gyasasi. You can know me in full, just here. Now Prabhupada took those last two words, hear me, and that's what inspired his quoting of these 5 verses from the 2nd chapter of Bhagavatam in the purport. Because this is our chief process, is hearing. Yeah, you seem to be familiar with chanting Hare Krishna. You've got a bead bag there and everything. You chant a certain number of rounds every day?
Yes.
Great. So, as you know, we also sing and dance. So, whether you're chanting to yourself or you're hearing and chanting and chanting and hearing, the hearing is essential. You're hearing and then repeating. And those who are chanted, they're hearing you, and back and forth. So the hearing and the chanting is the essence of the whole process. So here he gives a nice little summary from the Bhagavatam of how that hearing process can culminate in realization of Krishna. This last verse, Prabhupada gives kind of a summary of the meaning here. He doesn't give a strict translation. But what the last two verses say, Evam prasanna manaso, gradually as one becomes purer, Shinvatam Sukata Krishna, Krishna within the heart, he's understanding that my devotee is hearing of me in a pure, from a proper source. Punya Shavana Kirtana, that means that just by hearing and chanting about Krishna, you become pious, because you're associating with him through the sound vibration. Krishna, who's in the heart, Vidyantaksto, abhadrani vidunoti. Vidunoti literally means to cleanse away. And the abhadras are things that are inauspicious. Means these are all of the desire, material desires, the resentments we may have gotten, someone wronged us, a million different things that are in the heart. Lust, anger, greed, illusion. So those gradually become cleansed away. Surit satam. Surit means the best well-wishing friend. Krishna is the best well-wishing friend, someone who always has our best interests at mind and heart. So he's within the heart, and he's cleansing it away himself. And then when it's partially cleansed, nashta prayeshu, when there's a good portion of it, not 100%, by nityam bhagavata sevya, by serving the Bhagavat. Now that means, in this case, the Bhagavatam, by hearing the Bhagavatam, and also by serving the spiritual preceptor. Both of them are known as Bhagavats. Then one becomes fixed, naishtiki, in Bhagavad Bhakti. Bhagavad Bhakti means devotional service to the Lord, who's known as Uttama Shloka. It means he who is glorified in the most beautiful shlokas. I can give you some samples. I'm famous for that.
Sure.
I will. Let's finish this. So at that time, tadadadas tamo bhava. This is the rajas and tamas, so the two lowest modes of nature. You've read some of the Gita, about the modes of nature?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are rajas and tamas. Rajas means, how can I enjoy? Let me make some money, And tamas means, okay, I've had it, let me just sleep. And when I wake up, smoke a joint, go back to sleep. You know what I mean? It's a very dangerous mode of nature. But they can affect us. And the lust and the greed, etc., that are associated with those modes are also cheta eta anavidam. Your consciousness is no longer affected by them, and you're fixed in goodness, prasidati, and which is a situation of natural happiness and thoughtfulness. So now the next verse, this is evam prasanna manaso. Prasanna means two things. It means very clear and naturally joyful. So this is a great state for the mind to be in Krishna consciousness. By the nature of Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga, by Bhagavad Bhakti, Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam. Vijnanam is a very important word. Jnana means knowledge, and Vijnana means realized knowledge. In other words, someone may come and they open their pack and they say, this honey is fantastic. It's made by bees, all organic, and they bring this flower and this pollen. It's very wonderful. So you know about it, but you really don't know about it until you taste it, right? So that's the tasting. The tasting is vijnana. Hearing about it is knowing. It's jnana and vijnana. So here he's saying you're getting direct experience of Bhagavan, of Krishna, as you become more and more pure. Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, the truth of Bhagavan, of the Lord, you're going to know viscerally. And then Mukta Sangha Sajayate, you're victorious over all of these attachments that are keeping it. Mukta means free. You're free from attachment, and free from attachment means basically liberated. And then the last verse, in this state, Vidyate Kata Ridya Granti, the knots in the heart, different material desires, gross and subtle, that keep us bound here, they're severed. Chidyante, again, same cutting. Sarva Sanksha, all your doubts are cut to pieces, because you're getting direct experience. And then Chiyante Chasikarmani, all your previous karma, good and bad, that's also destroyed. And then Drishta Eva Atmanishvare, Prabhupada translated, one sees oneself, one's original spiritual identity, and the Ishvara, the Lord. You're seeing both of those in the heart. You become self-realized, just by the process of hearing. So this is a very important passage in all the purports. We made a book out of these verses and other verses nearby. It's called the Dharma, the Way of Transcendence. So the conclusion of the first verse, therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or about Krishna from his devotee in Krishna Kant can one understand the science of Krishna. So we're having a great opportunity now because we're hearing from Krishna's great devotee, Prabhupada, and we're hearing from Krishna directly. You're not hearing from me. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a medium, coming through, hopefully without distortion. So any questions on this first verse, Daniel? Or discussion or anything?
Not at the moment.
Okay, that's good. If there is a question, we have mics, a mic in the back there. Okay. Then you can, yeah. If you have a question, you can grab that. Any questions from Zoom? No. Okay, we'll go to text 2. See if you can just repeat it. Jnanam teham savijnanam.
Jnanam teham savijnanam.
Idam bhakshyam yasheshataha.
Idam bhakshyami yasheshataha.
Yagyatva neha bhuyon yaj.
Yajyatva neha bhuyon yaj.
Gyatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. And this being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So thanks for coming. You finished your job in the kitchen. So phenomenal and numinous simply means material and spiritual. The word numinous is a word that might not be so familiar, but that's what it means. Phenomenal and numinous knowledge. Vijnanam, jnana and vijnana. Purport. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. In another place, Prabhupada repeated this practically. He says, real knowledge means knowledge of matter, spirit, and the controller of both. This is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 113 say, Kasmin nu bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavatiti. So, yeah, when Bhagavan is known or understood, then everything falls into place. You see everything in relationship, proper relationship. So just real quick, this... So Prabhupada is referring to the beginning of the 4th chapter. In that beginning of the 4th chapter, Krishna explains how he says, Imam vivastate yogam proktavan hamabhyam vivasvaman vepaha monarikvaka vepavit. I spoke this same science. This is not something new, Arjuna, I'm speaking to you. Many millions of years ago to the sun god. Because it's important that it be known by the leaders of society so that they can rule according to this and they can inculcate the knowledge. And he in turn, the sun god, spoke it to his son, Vaivasvata Manu, and then Vaivasvata spoke it to Ikshvaku, who brought it down into human society. But, evam parambara praptam, so it's received in disciplic succession, from guru to disciple, who then becomes the next guru, like that. Evam parampara praptam imam raja shayo vidu, and the Raja Rishis, the saintly kings, they understood it. But by the powerful force of time, the knowledge has been lost, has been distorted. And like we can see today in Kali Yuga, who's living according to Bhagavad Gita? Very few. So Krishna wants to reinstate the knowledge and the parampara in the form of Arjuna, and then it will again be in human society for the benefit of the people in general. Because after all, he claims us, we're all his children. And so he's always coming periodically, as he says in the subsequent verses, whenever there's discrepancy in Dharma, I come and reinstitute Dharma, protected devotees, annihilate the miscreants. So that's what has happened before. Arjun, Prabhupada refers to that. And so now he's speaking to Arjun for that very reason, to reinstitute it in human society. All right. No questions, comments? We can go on. Text 3. Manushyanam sahasreshu
Manushyanam sahasreshu
kaschid yatati siddhaye
kaschid yatati siddhaye
yatatam api siddhanam
yatatam api siddhanam
kaschan mam veti tattvataha.
kaschin mam veti tattvataha.
Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Purport. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, living entity, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, but at the same time he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord Govinda. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Karvakarana Sarvakarana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotees to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy, as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti, practiced by the unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti, may be easy. But when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.101. I'll say, you say. Shruti Smriti Puranadi
Shruti Smriti Puranadi
Pancharatra Vidhim Vina
Charatra Vidhim Vina
Aikantiki Hare Bhakti
Aikantiki Hare Bhakti
Utpataya Eva Kalpate.
Utpataiva Kalpate.
Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. It is not possible for the Brahman-realized impersonalist or the Paramatma-realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda or the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Muyanti yat surya, mam tu vedana kaschana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says. And if one does know him, then samahatma sadurlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. That comes up later in this chapter. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is, tattvataha, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities in Krishna. His being the cause of all causes, his omnipotence and opulence, and his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. He is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore it is said, Atak Shri Krishna Namadi
Adar Sri Krishna Namadi
Nabhave Grahyam Indriyahi
Bhavet Grahyam Indriyai
Sevam Mukhehi Jivadav
Sevanmukhehi Jivadav
Swayameva Spuratyadaha.
Swayameva Spuratyataha.
No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service to him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.234. So, the very important principle here, which was also mentioned in the purport to the first verse, and that is that it's Krishna who is revealing himself to us He is not accessible. You could speculate or meditate for millions of years, but if you're not connecting with Krishna and developing your love and service attitude to him, he's not going to reveal himself. He reserves the right, as he mentioned in this chapter, of not being visible. So this is a very significant point, because the whole bhakti process rests on that. And that is that we are simply trying to become worthy of revelation, of Krishna's revelation. It's establishing this personal relationship. Prabhupada always gives the example. Suppose there's some big person in society, say some political figure, the mayor, the governor, the president, something. So you may have all the qualifications in the world. You may be a big professor. You may have $1 million or more, And but if you don't establish some relationship with him, then he's not going to reveal himself to you. You're not, you may make an appointment if he wants to see you, but if he doesn't want to see you, you can't do anything. So none of our what's called the ascending process, trying to investigate and speculate and meditate, but having no simple service attitude, recognizing the Lord and glorifying Him, hearing from Him or His pure devotees. That's why the spiritual master is so important, because here's someone who's certifiably dear to the Lord. He has realization, as you can see by his activities and his character, his or her character. So if someone is pleased, if that person becomes pleased because you're doing what they say, you're following the, then Krishna becomes pleased and he reveals more. It's that personal. Everything is completely personal. There's not a angstrom unit throughout the universe that's not personal, because it's all got relationship to the Supreme Person. Now Krishna also has his material energy, and his personal relationship is not obvious there. You go out, to some forest or something, and if you're not Krishna conscious, you'll see the trees, you'll hear the birds, you'll see the ground, there's the river, But none of that may necessarily make you think of God, because you don't know that and all of these, the water and the land and the earth and everything is all related directly to Krishna. Every living entity is part and parcel of Him, and all the energies we see, this is my external energy. He's going to explain in a few verses. Boomer, apple, onono, vayo, kong, mano, buddha, cha, ahankara, iti, yame, binna, pakatadashtada. Wonderful verse. The earth, solid matter, the liquids, the gases, right, the space, earth, water, the radiant energy, the electricity and everything else. Plus the more subtle, the mind, our own mind, intelligence, and the ego, the sense of self. All of these, Krishna says, are my external energies. They're related to Him, but they're not alive. But above them, these are all my apara prakriti, my lower energies, unconscious. But above them is the entities who are para prakriti, and who are sustaining it, just like we're sustaining this body. The body is a body functioning only because we're in it as soul. If it becomes dysfunctional and we leave, then it just reverts to its elements, has to be burned, buried, get rid of. So similarly, this whole universe is being sustained because the spirit souls are in it, and because Krishna is in every atom as the supreme soul. So once you know that, then your vision of the world changes and your vision of yourself changes. So it comes through knowledge. So that's why Krishna is very rare, especially in this age. Most people are completely absorbed in externals and things, and even if they think about these things, they'll get sucked into some impersonal thing. So this is. Prabhupada is emphasizing again, as Krishna does in the first verse, Tat Shrinu, hear from the right source. And this verse appears several times in the Gita. Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Nambavai Grayam. We cannot, Grayam is like the word grasp in English. It can mean understand. With our present senses or mind, we cannot grasp or understand the Krishna's name, adi, etc., form, qualities, or pastimes. But if we begin serving Him with the tongue, chanting His holy name and tasting of prasadam, then eventually He will reveal Himself proportionally to our purification. So that's the science of bhakti, and because of that we have an advantage over the yogis, because just the Ashtanga yogis, generally that's all by their own power of yoga. And the danger is that as they get powerful, if they do it right, or steer, then they get all these siddhis, powers. They can fly, they can astral travel, and they can walk on water and whatever, And those are very tempting. Now let me go to the United States, maybe I'll make some money, Out, they come down from the mountain, off they go. So, because they haven't cultivated bhakti, they cultivated something else. And the impersonals are even worse. From the beginning, they're denying the ultimate reality of the personality of Godhead. So how can you please Him? How can you become a devotee? It's impossible. So it's all very scientific. All right. If there's no question or comment, well, let's continue. That very verse I just quoted is next. Yes, Brahma.
So because the topic of Aparasakti and Parasakti came, so there are like entities or beings in Goloka Vrindavan, like close associates of Krishna, who will be engaging in direct services with Krishna, and there are jivas who are like falling into this kuntha, which is full material world. So why this distinction came, Prabhu? Like there are one jivas who can fall, but there is another type of beings who cannot
the way
fall.
Prabhupada explained it. No, this is Lord Chaitanya says. Okay, Sanatana Goswami, he asks, "Who am I? Why am I suffering? The threefold miseries of birth. If I don't know this, what's the use of all my erudition?" He was very, wise in materially, the Brahman, and he's representing us. So, who am I? So Lord Chaitanya answers. It's a classic question. Who am I? Not just I, but every living entity. Jivara Sodapa Krishna and Nitya Das. Next line answers your question. That's your question. Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beda Beda Prakash. So the Swarup is what you're. What is the real nature of all of us here and in Goloka, everywhere? The indestructible nature of the soul. So every single soul is by nature a servant of Krishna. But Krishnera Tatasta Shakti, all of these living entities, minute living entities, which we're going to read about probably tomorrow, are marginal energy of Krishna. Krishnera Tatasta Shakti means that our constant position is to be vulnerable, to be become fascinated with the material energy. That's the tata. Tata means on the border. So we're on the border between the material and the spiritual. Now, the souls who are Goloka, there's some who are nitya mukta, and they never fall down, and so they're always serving Krishna. Now, there's also those who aren't souls, who are internal energies of Krishna. It's not like Radharani is a soul, she's a Ladini Shakti, and her immediate expansions are also Lalita Shakti and all these gopis. They're eternal. They have a different position. They're part of they can't leave. They're never going to leave. They're not jivas. Okay. Yeah, they're energies. They're different. They're the pleasure energy, Ladini Shakti. So that's a whole other discussion. But there's uncountable jivas also who are under the protection of that internal energy, and who are serving, and they don't fall. But there's some unfortunate souls who somehow or other, and no one can explain why, because we have our minute independence. If we didn't, then love wouldn't have any meaning. Love has to be freely given. Therefore, we all have this. And we're the ones who made the wrong choice. Who knows how many eons ago? But by great fortune, now we have a chance to remedy that, to go back. And Krishna said several places, once you go back, you're not going back here. Once burned, twice shy. It's not that we're always going to remember our things here, but no way. I've already had that. So that's a good Bhavanavattante Dhamma Paramangama. So we're constitutionally marginal. But there's many living entities who always make the right choice. They never come down. But there's enough over the eons to populate this material world. That's the idea. All right, so we can read the next verse, very famous verse. Bhumarapo nalo vayu kang mano buddhare vicha ahankara iti yamme binna prakritirashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Purport: the science of God analyzes the constitutional position of God and his diverse energies. Material nature is called Prakriti, or the energy of the Lord in his different Purusha incarnations, expansions, as described in the Sattvata Tantra. I'm just going to read through this. Vishnastu trini rupani purusakyanyato vidahu ekam tu mahatakshrastrir dvitiyam tvanda sangstitam tritiyam sarvabhutastam tani gyatva vimuchyate. For material creation, Lord Krishna's plenary expansion assumes three Vishnus. The first one, Mahavishnu, creates the total material energy known as the Mahat Tattva. The second, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, enters into all the universes to create diversities in each of them. The third, Chirodakashayi Vishnu, is diffused as the all-pervading Supersoul in all the universes and is known as Paramatma. He is present even within the atoms. Anyone who knows these three Vishnus can be liberated from material entanglement. This material world is a temporary manifestation of one of the energies of the Lord. All the activities of the material world are directed by these three Vishnu expansions of Lord Krishna. The Purushas are called incarnations. Generally, one who does not know the science of God, Krishna, assumes that this material world is for the enjoyment of the living entities, and that the living entities are the Purushas, the causes, controllers, and enjoyers of the material things. According to the Bhagavad Gita, this atheistic conclusion is false. In the verse under discussion, it is stated that Krishna is the original cause of the material manifestation. Srimad Bhagavatam also confirms this. The ingredients of the material manifestation are separated energies of the Lord. Even the brahma-jyoti, which is the ultimate goal of the impersonalists, is a spiritual energy manifested in the spiritual sky. There are no spiritual diversities in the brahma-jyoti, as there are in the Vaikuntha lokas, and the impersonalist accepts this brahma-jyoti as the ultimate eternal goal. The Paramatma manifestation is also a temporary all-pervasive aspect of the Chirodakashayi Vishnu. The Paramatma manifestation is not eternal in the spiritual world. Therefore, the factual absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He is the complete energetic person, and he possesses different separated internal energies. In the material energy, the principal manifestations are 8, as above mentioned. Out of these, the first 5 manifestations, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, are called the 5 gigantic creations, or the gross creations, within which the 5 sense objects are included. They are the manifestations of physical sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Material science comprises these 10 items and nothing more. But the other 3 items, namely mind, intelligence, and false ego, are neglected by the materialists. Philosophers who deal with mental activities are also not perfect in knowledge because they do not know the ultimate source, Krishna. The false ego, I am, and it is mine, which constitute the basic principle of material existence, includes 10 sense organs for material activities. Intelligence refers to the total material creation, called the Mahat Tattva. Therefore, from the 8 separated energies of the Lord are manifest the 24 elements of the material world, which are the subject matter of Sankhya atheistic philosophy. They are originally offshoots from Krishna's energies and are separated from him. But atheistic Sankhya philosophers with a poor fund of knowledge do not know Krishna as the cause of all causes. The subject matter for discussion in the Sankhya philosophy is only the manifestation of the external energy of Krishna as it is described in the Bhagavad Gita. So we really can't expand much on this purport because we're running out of time. But I promised Daniel some shlokas. You ready? Okay. This is from the Krishna Karnamrita. No philosophy, just meditation on Krishna. Maduram maduram vaparasya vibhor maduram maduram vadanam maduram madugandhi madusmitametadaho maduram 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 maduram. Maduram means sweet. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face so fair. But his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. Now here's a prayer from Queen Kunti, famous in chapter 8 of the first canto. Near the end of her prayer, she says to Krishna, he was about to leave and go to Dwarka. She's pleading with him to stay, but he can't stay. Tvaimeya nannivishaya mati madhupate sakrit ratamun bhataradha gange baugamodanvati. O Madhava, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. Anyone can chant those. I can send you my poetry file. You send me an email. Dravida 108. Dravida 108. @gmail.
How do you spell it?
Dravida. Dravida.
Dravida.
Dravida.
Okay, on the way.
And I'll send you a nice PDF, which I'm sure you can read, of all my poetry.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Okay, we have to adjourn. This curtains will open in 4 minutes.
I just have one question, quick question.
Yeah.
I vote.
Thank you, Prabhu. I just have one quick question about the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. I don't really understand like what is really happening there. I can understand Paramatma, and I can understand
I can't do justice to it right now.
Vishnu.
Do you have any time tomorrow?
Sure.
Okay, come back. We'll have class at the same time, same station,
Okay.
and I'll answer that question. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada.